Hello and welcome to the Bold Leadership Stories show, where we talk about experiences shaping exceptional lives. And today I have the honor of speaking with retired Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch from the U.S. Army. And Oakland has, or Oak, as
right.
you like to be called, correct?
That's right.
Oak is a nationally recognized keynote speaker and the author of the 2021 release, Your Leadership Legacy: Becoming the Leader You Were Meant to Be. Both his leadership presentation and his book are based on his 40 plus years of leadership experience, 23 years as a combat arms officer in the United States Army. Oak highlights principles that will benefit today's leaders and inspire the leaders of tomorrow in any profession and at any level of leadership. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for that introduction. That's very nice.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Oak. It's an honor to have you here today on the show and talking about one of my favorite subjects, leadership. And because we talk about bold leadership stories, and who best to talk about being bold than Lieutenant Colonel in the Army?
Well, thank you. Well, and it really is, like we've discussed a couple of times. This is my passion right now, is to get out and talk about leadership, because it's near and dear to my heart, as it is to a lot of people's heart right now. And I think we got to get out there and get the message out of what a good leader is.
That's a great point. I'm going to share my screen here. I've got your book up that we can show to everybody. Oak has written a book. It's published in 2021, Your Leadership Legacy. Tell us about that book, Oak, and what inspired you to write it.
Yeah, so I've been given a leadership presentation since about 2006. As I was running an Army ROTC program at the University of South Alabama in Mobile, and I was going around talking to high school students, and I was talking to college students, and I would always ask them what they wanted to do in life, what profession, and what they wanted to be. And a lot of them would say, well, I want to be a leader. And I'd say, okay, great. What does that mean? What does that look like? And you get that deer in the headlights look. They had no idea what it took to be a leader. And they probably, at that point in their life, they probably wanted to be a leader for the wrong reasons. They probably wanted it because they wanted the title, they wanted the privileges, they wanted more pay. And let's face it, leadership comes with that in a lot of times, and that's okay, as long as that's not why you want to be a leader. The reason you should want to be a leader is to help other people, to be a servant leader. And I'm a firm believer in that. And so I came up with this presentation, and I've been giving it for 15, 16 years. And so I always knew I wanted to write a book. And so I just took that presentation and I put it into book form. And the thing that really pushed me, because I wanted to do it for years, I was at a motivational speaking event at our Catholic church, my wife and I, and her mom and two ladies in the building that we live in, our condo that we live in. And it was a combination, motivational speaking and how do we rejuvenate the Catholic Church. And great speaker, Jonathan Fanning, if you haven't checked on his stuff, you should. He gave it was a 3-hour presentation. Now, he didn't talk the entire time. He talked for about 35, 40 minutes, and then they play music and do some other things. But every time there was a break, I'd go up and talk to him. Mm-hmm. And during the last break, when I was talking to him, I told him I wanted to get out and speak like he is. And he said, turned around and he looked at me and said, "Oh, have you written a book?" And I said, "Well, I'm thinking about it." He said, "Stop thinking about it and write it." And so I went home that night, wrote out my table of contents, started writing the next day, and less than a year later, it was published.
Excellent. How'd that feel?
Oh, it was great. It really was. I mean, the day that it actually went live was a special day. It really was.
So how is that? Has it impacted your life the way you thought it would, having that accomplishment done?
Yeah, it was something I always wanted to do, and it did fulfill something in me that I want to do that. And I think I got another book when I retire from my day job here in October. My goal is to get out and speak more and to write my second book, which will be talking about secrets to success, not only in your job but in life. And so that's my next goal is to get that book out. But it was for me, it was a personal accomplishment that I always wanted to do, and I was glad I finally got it done.
Excellent. So the title of your book is an interesting title, especially being your background as a lieutenant colonel in the Army and the responsibilities I'm sure you've had taking groups of soldiers into various situations, either on the battlefield or back in the headquarters. All of that would have challenges associated with it. But having that legacy, what is it that really got you? Where's your passion, and where did that come from about leaving a legacy?
Yeah, so I've been lucky in my life, in my career in the Army. I had several very good servant leaders who kind of pointed me in that direction and became mentors to me and helped develop me. And not just people that I worked for. I had some great mentors who worked for me. And when I say that, some people look at you like, how can that be a mentor? And I will tell you, some of the best leaders I ever worked with were people who worked for me. Master Sergeant David Powell was one of them. Master Sergeant Pinson was one of them. So I had some people who pointed me in that direction. And I look at myself as part of their legacy. And then all of the young men and women that I have helped develop, commission as lieutenants who eventually go on. Some of them make a career out of the Army. Some of them go out in the civilian world and make an impact in the civilian world in a company that they start working for. That to me is the legacy. Not only that somebody helped me become the leader I was meant to be, but now it's my job to help them. And the legacy that you leave isn't what you did during your career. It's the leaders you produced, and then the leaders they produce, so that you're influencing people and this country and whatever organizations they work in for years and years and years after you're gone.
So legacy, by definition, has a continuity to it, right? So
yes, absolutely.
Then what you're saying here is that when you're a leader, part of your duty is to leave that legacy of develop future leaders.
Absolutely. I tell people, look, you as a leader need to teach, train, coach, mentor the next generation. When I walk up to a leader, somebody who tells me they're a leader, one of the first things I ask them is, who are you mentoring? And if they tell me nobody, then I say, you're not a leader, you're a boss. Because leaders produce more leaders. I've been, again, lucky. I've got a lot of young men and women that I commissioned and helped develop into leaders who stay in contact with me. And they'll send me a message every once in a while and say, hey, sir, I just got promoted to captain or major. The last one, I got a young lady, she's half my age at least, who just got promoted to lieutenant colonel. You don't think that made me feel pretty old? And she made sure she sent me a message and let me know. And throughout my career, I've had young lieutenants or captains that I helped produce that have asked for my opinion or asked my advice on something. And that's our job. That's what I tell people. Look, if somebody calls me, if one of the people that I help develop calls me, I will stop whatever I'm doing and help them, because that's what I'm supposed to do. And hopefully someday they will do the same thing for the people the leaders they're producing.
So when you say, I love that you're talking, that you're not a leader, in your opinion, you're not a leader unless you're producing more leaders.
That's right. That's your job. That's your responsibility.
But I've never seen that in a job description.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, and we talked about a definition of leadership. And I think that, when I do my presentation, that's one of the first things I open with is, what is your definition of leadership? And I always tell people, you need to have one. Organizations need to have one. I tell the CEOs and presidents and fire chiefs and police chiefs, if you don't define leadership, how can you hold somebody to a standard? How do they know what they're trying to get to be a leader if you haven't defined what a leader is? And one of those things in that definition should be that you are helping to develop the next generation of leaders, being a mentor. And I believe that 100%. And so I mean, that's huge to me, is that you got to have I mean, every Fortune 500 company has a mission statement. Sure. Why not have a leadership statement? What is it that you expect leaders to do, to be? How do they know when they got there, when they are living up to the standard that you have set for them?
Right. Yeah, it's a great point. What do you do to help organizations and maybe individuals to incorporate those ideas into their lives and make that happen for them?
Right. So I do, I am doing, out on the speaking circuit, I'm doing conferences, I'm doing leadership symposiums, being a speaker at them. I have had a couple companies who have invited me, and one's invited me several times to come back and do things, training sessions, consulting. You know, I had somebody told me one time, they said, look, we're having problems. Will you just come and spend a day or two? I'll give you free reign. Go talk to whoever you want, look at whatever you want, and tell me what we're doing wrong and how we can get better. And I love doing that, because it always, a new set of eyes can see things that you can't see because it's normal to you. It's that habit, and we are all creatures of habit. Okay. Anybody who tells you they aren't is lying to you, because we all are. And you just get into that routine and you do things because that's the way it's always been done, and nobody questions it until somebody with a new set of eyes comes in and start asking some questions. Why do you do it that way? Is there a better way? Are there resources you need to get better at what you're doing? You know, and if you start asking those questions, then that starts the mind going. And especially if you ask it of the people who are doing the job that you're asking about, not the boss, not the leader. You're going down and talking to the person on the line who is doing that job. What's a better way to do that? And I guarantee you, they probably have a better way to do it. Nobody's ever asked them that question. Nobody ever cared. They just did it because that's the way it's always been done. And they would continue to do that if nobody asked the question and gave them the option to say there's a better way.
Oh, you know what? That's so right. I've had some experience with that myself.
Oh, I see it all the time. All the time I see that. You know, and I always use, one of the examples I use is my father's best friend when I was growing up. He worked at a Chrysler assembly plant 12 miles away. And for 37 years, he put fenders on whatever vehicle was being built at that plant.
The fender guy. Okay.
Yeah. So if you took over the running of that plant and you were having problems with a fender, who would you go talk to? I hope you go talk to that guy. Yeah. He probably knew there was a problem and tried to tell somebody, and nobody listened to him.
Yep. Good chance that's probably true. So when you're looking at building leadership and creating that legacy, say in an environment like that, what would you do to help promote that within the organization?
So I think it's not I always tell people, look, this is a journey. It's not a destination. I can't come for an hour or a day and you're all great leaders. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
It's got to be, I tell companies, and unfortunately, when money gets tight or something like that, the first thing they do is cut all their leadership training, which is the worst thing they can do, because the leaders are the one that's going to pull you out of that. So I always tell people, you got to have a leadership development program. That does two things. Number one, you're developing the leaders inside, so you don't have to go outside your organization to get all your leaders. You still got to go out every once in a while to get somebody. I got it. And that's good to get new blood in every once in a while. But you want to have people inside your organization growing to be the leaders of your organization as well. And the other thing it does is it gives them, they know there's an opportunity for them to improve themselves. If you don't have a leadership development program, they know they're stuck where they're at. or you're going to promote them to a leader and now they don't know what they're doing. That's called the Peter principle. And we all know how that works. And we do that a lot in this country, probably everywhere, but certainly in this country and in the military, we do it as well. But if you train them along the way, once a month, once a quarter, whatever it is that you do. And I always tell people, you want to have small things like once a month or every 2 weeks. And then you have the big thing, a conference or a symposium or a training event once a quarter. And that will help you develop those leaders that you need that are going to step up and take over when you leave. And we're all going to leave one way or the other. We're all
the other. Yeah. So can you give us an example of that, how that would work, or have maybe an example from your experience?
Yeah. So one of the ways I do it, that I advocate, is that you read a leadership book. I don't care whose it is. Pick a book about leadership that you, as the leader who's facilitating the training, believe in, and then and get one for everybody in your conference, your training that you're trying to train as a leader, and then talk about that. And maybe you do a chapter or two, a week or every 2 weeks or whatever it is. And because I'm a firm believer that if you want to be a leader, you got to read. Harry S. Truman famous quote, "Not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers." I believe that.
Yeah.
Sure. And the thing I always emphasize to them is you don't have to read books inside your profession. Look outside your profession. There's great leaders out there, and leadership is leadership. Let's not kid ourselves. It doesn't matter what profession you learned it in or where you practice it in. If you can lead people, because leadership is about people, period, plain and simple, then you can lead any organization. So I always tell them, look outside. One of my favorite leadership books, it has nothing to do with the military. It doesn't even mention the Army or the military in it. It's John Wooden's On Leadership. It's one of the best leadership books out there, because he understood that it wasn't about building a winning team. He wanted to build a winning team, and obviously he did, but he did it the right way. He developed great young men that were going to be great young men in society after they stopped playing basketball. And that, to me, is exactly what legacy is about, and about servant leadership. Again,
so beyond the job at hand and investing in the person.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because even in the Army, when we're developing our junior leaders, we know some of them are going to leave and they're going to go out in the civilian world, and that's great. Now they're taking all that leadership out there in the civilian world and making an impact on everybody else's lives and organizations as well. And again, every leader, every organization needs good leadership. I don't care what it is, whether it's a university or a sports team or a hospital or a food bank or whatever. It doesn't matter. Every organization needs good leaders. So that's okay that they're going to leave and do something else. You want them to spread that good leadership throughout the country, not just in one area.
Right. It's an excellent approach to it's an investment in our heritage.
That's right.
And the longevity of what we believe in, right? So that's it's a great thing. I see on your website that you've done some, not only the publication that you've just recently completed, your leadership legacy, but you've also published a couple of other books. The decisiveness of Israeli small unit leadership on the Golan Heights in 73 Yom Kippur War, and the making of an M1 tank driver.
Yeah. So, so the M1
bring back some memories.
Yeah, it does. So that was when I was a captain, the M1 tank driver, and I was a basic training company commander for armor company. So we were training young privates how to.
Do you have any cool stories from that experience?
Yeah, I do. So we were training young privates how to drive, gun, how to load them, everything about the M1 tank. So one day I was I'm a firm believer in walking around and being out of the office. I hate being behind a desk. So I was out, we were on the gunnery range, and we were firing rounds all morning. And then it came lunchtime, and there were three privates sitting on top of one of the M1 tanks. And they were eating an MRE, that delicious meal that the Army provides. So I grabbed an MRE and I hopped up on top of the tank and I sat there and I was talking to them, and I was asking them how training was going and how, were they missing home? And they all were, as we all do when we're away like that for the first time. And I asked them, one of the questions I asked them is, well, so what are you looking for out of this? Are you looking to make a career out of this, Army? Are you looking to do your minimum time and do something else? And so they all gave me their answers. And so one of the things I talked about was, again, leadership. And I said, well, at some point you might decide that you want to be a leader in the Army, and you go back to school and you go to ROTC and you get your degree and you become an officer in the Army, and then you can serve the Army that way and serve other people along the way. And there was one guy who about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, right after I published my book, he obviously saw it and he gave me a call and he said, "You don't remember me." He said, "But we were having lunch on top of an M1 tank." And I said, "I remember that day very well." I said, I don't remember your name, but I remember that day." And he said, "So I listened to what you said and I did my time as a private in the Army and I got promoted to whatever it was, sergeant or whatever it was he got promoted to." He said, "But I got out. I went back to college, got my degree, got my commission, did 20 years as an officer in the Army, and now I'm a leader of a company outside." Those are the things that make you keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, that's cool. That's like, wow, boom.
Yeah. So those are the things that keep you going. Kind of like when you play golf and you make that one great shot. All your other shots that day were horrible, but that one great shot makes you come back tomorrow.
Well, that's the one to remember. So it's moments like that then, and what I'm kind of gleaning from this is that as a leader in creating that legacy, it's a powerful thing to take moments like that and be interested in your team and be vulnerable to some regard to, because you're an officer, you don't have to listen to anything like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have to get up on that tank. I could have gone back to my office and
you certainly didn't have to, chow on that MRE. You did that. Yeah. Why did you do that?
But because again, I believe that leaders do what their people are doing. And if they were eating MREs, then I needed to eat an MRE as well. If it was raining out and they're out in the rain, I need to be out in the rain. If it's snowing, I need to be in the snow. I mean, I believe that's what leaders do. You never ask the people you're leading to do anything that you wouldn't do. Now, there's times I got it, and I tell all these young lieutenants that we produce, there's times when you've got to be in the office. There is paperwork officers have to do. I got it. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, you need to be where your soldiers are or the people who you lead are, because that's what they expect. You want to build trust, and that's what it's all about, is trust. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what allows the leader-led relationship to work. People follow you because they trust you, not because you got a title. They could care less about your title. Now, they may have to do what you tell them to do, even if they don't trust you because you're the boss. But they will want to do what you want them to do if you're the leader and they have trust in you. And there's very simple ways to build trust with people, very simple.
And what are those? How do you go about building trust?
Yeah, so again, it's about people on people relationship. That's the main thing that allows trust to start being built. And I tell everybody that if you're the leader, you need to do a couple things. Number one is you need to lead by walking around. Get out of your office. Go talk to people where they work. Don't talk to them in your office. That's one of the worst things you can do. They're never going to tell you the truth in your office. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Go out where they're working and ask them questions and get to know them. And I tell people that the best way to do that is when you're out walking around, find at least one person every day in your organization and find out one new thing about that person, not about work. something personal, their spouse's name, their children's names. What sports do their children play? What hobbies do they have? What do they do as a family? Find out something personal, and you'll start seeing that trust grow, because they see you care, that you actually are sitting there listening to them, telling you what it is they do. And a good way to do that, and I had a 3-star general who was a mentor of mine who told me this a few years ago. And he said, Oak, never, ever turn down a chance to go get your own cup of coffee. He said, 2 things happen when you do that. Number 1, people realize you're human. You're no better than they are. You got to go get your cup of coffee just like they do. And number 2, if you're lucky, you got 2 or 3 different ways to get to the coffee pot and back to your office, so you can stop along the way and talk to people where they're working. That's how you build trust.
That's how you build, well, and then stopping and talking to them and actually engaging in a way
and actually listening. That's the key.
Listening. Yeah, which is a skill. It's not something that, a lot of people just don't know how to do that. And being interested. It's like people won't be interested in you until they know, how
you're interested in
them, right? So it's a good lesson. Having that, having that scenario on a consistent basis within an organization, I imagine fosters that trust, and that trust builds, like we were talking about at the beginning of our conversation here, that the guy who did the fenders, if he had a manager that was actually interested in him, and he saw an issue that could save the company or time or money, he might just mention that because he knows the person and he trusts that the manager, that he's not going to shut him down or make him look like a fool.
Absolutely. And it was General Colin Powell, one of my favorite quotes. He said, when the people you are leading stops bringing their problems to you, you are no longer their leader. Because that, again, it's about people. And if they don't trust that you care enough to help them with their problem, they're going to somebody who does. And so you're no longer the leader. You may have the title of being their leader, but you're not their leader.
Right. Yeah, so important. So you're a busy guy right now. You're like all over the map. You're doing podcasts and you're speaking and you got tons of engagements going on. What's the next 6 months look like for you right now?
Yeah, so I retired from my day job in October. So I won't be recruiting for Army ROTC anymore after that. And that will free up some of my time to do.
You're going to miss that?
What's that?
Are you going to miss that?
I will miss some of it. I'll miss working with young men and women and helping to be, help mentor them. But it's time. I want to spend my time on what I'm really passionate about right now, which is getting out and talking and writing that second book. So I've got a couple of speaking engagements already set up. I'm going to be talking at Norwich University at their first ever leadership conference. I'm going to be one of the keynote speakers there up in Vermont in April. I'll be in Oregon talking to all the state fire chiefs in Oregon in April. And then in June, I'm going to be in San Francisco talking to an organization that has a bunch of doctors and nurses and lawyers and CEOs of presidents of hospitals and nursing homes. And then in July, I will be in New York City talking to CEOs and presidents of hospitals and nursing homes.
Wow. Some very influential groups that you're speaking with.
Yeah, and I've been lucky. I really have kind of been all over talking to different groups of people, and I love it. I would prefer to do that than to pigeonhole into one specific profession. So I've talked to first responders. I've talked to a bunch of colleges and universities. I've talked to CEOs and presidents of multi-million-dollar companies. I've talked to an HR conference. So I really do like that I get to speak to a variety of different people.
Well, it goes to show that your message is so needed, I think, now, that building that legacy and having the idea of constructing continuity with leadership is a very important element for society, for business, for all those areas. I mean, first responders, there's some great leaders in all of those areas, but if they're not focused on developing core leadership within their organizations and hiring from within, they're missing out on so much potential.
They are.
And
at some point it dies. If you're not training the next generation, then it dies with you. And again, Master Sergeant David Powell, who worked for me at the University of South Alabama, he was the one who used that great quote that I use all the time. Great leadership handed down from generation to generation is what develops great nations. And the most powerful thing about that quote, and it is a powerful quote, I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. he said it.
We'll keep using it. I love it.
Yeah. And he, you can take that word nations and you can substitute anything you want. A baseball team, a university, a hospital, a food bank, whatever, because it doesn't change the power of that quote. Because again, just like you said just now, every organization, no matter your profession, they all need good leaders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Oak, for sharing some of your valuable time on my show today. And I'm very excited for you in the future. It sounds like you're off and running. Good luck on getting your next book. Love to see it when it comes out. And like to encourage everybody to go grab a copy of Your Leadership Legacy by Oak McCulloch on Amazon. And I think you'll learn a ton from that book and take that to heart to develop the leadership legacy within your organization. And this could be business, it could be family, it could be, anything. So
absolutely, Jim.
And all those principles would apply, right? So,
that's right. I always tell people you got to be a leader in your family first. So, but thanks for having me on the show. I loved it. And I appreciate you having me on.
Very good. Well, thank you. We'll talk again soon.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.